start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the 11th.
Today's the 11th. It's Wednesday.
Yes, good morning and welcome to the January 11th meeting of the Barnstable County Commissioners. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we would take a minute to remember all of those who serve in our military, both here and abroad, and think of them in our thoughts and in our prayers. Thank you. So we will begin our agenda with a rousing discussion on, public comment. Sorry about that, I'm not used to that. Public comment. You'll have to remind me of that. Yes, David.
I just want to inform the chair that I may be recording portions of this meeting.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, if there's anyone else who wishes to record, please just announce it. Thank you very much. And those of you who have cell phones, if you would be so kind as to put them on vibrate or turn them off, that would be very helpful. And now we will begin with our first agenda item, which is the open meeting law remote participation policy discussion. I think there are some copies back there for those of you who are here.
I don't know if that's back there, Pat, but I can
Oh, it
certainly
isn't? I thought it
I
was.
don't think it is. I think that's something different.
Oh.
That's
But if
the
people-
public comment policy, I believe.
Oh, that's a public
Yeah.
comment policy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have 4 members of the Assembly of Delegates here. That's really nice.
This might be
Especially
a first,
members.
isn't it?
Well,
This might
it's
be the
not
highest
well,
number.
to have this many
Yeah.
is first. I think it's great because I think for us to have these discussions together can sometimes be very helpful. So this is our remote participation policy that we plan to adopt. It has been provided to us by our county council, and it is written in accordance with the Attorney General's statements regarding open meeting law.
Yeah,
Mark,
you want me to kind of go
Sure.
backwards in time? Yeah. As you know, I think it was last year, the legislature passed Chapter 30A, Section 20D, which allows remote participation at meetings of public bodies. And what that basically means is that people who are not physically in attendance can now participate in the discussion and vote. And then recently, the Attorney General's office promulgated their final regulations for that. We've been waiting for those for a while. So we have the new regulations. A couple of weeks ago, Bob sent out a memo just informing us of some of the provisions of that. And last week at our meeting, you asked me to come back, put together a policy, and bring it to you, and that's what you have in front of you at this point in time. And basically what I did was looked at the Mass General Law language, looked at the Attorney General's regulations, which are under 940 CMR 2910, and put together a policy that we can follow. And it basically mirrors what the law and the regulations say we have to do. And if you want to kind of summarize what that is.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It basically says that the appropriate public authority has to adopt the statute and the regulations, and that's you for county public bodies. Members of a public body who participate remotely and all persons present in the meeting location shall be clearly audible to each other. So everybody has to be able to hear what's going on. A quorum of the body, including the chair or the person designated to serve as the chair, has to be physically present at the meeting location before this can apply. So you have to have a quorum and physically present anyways. It does say members of the public body who participate remotely may vote and are not deemed to be absent for the purposes of the open meeting law. The chair or the person authorized to serve as chair shall permit a member of a public body to participate remotely if they determine that one or more of the following factors makes the member's physical attendance unreasonably difficult. And there's 5 of them. Five. Personal illness, personal disability, emergency, military service, or geographic distance. So one of those 5 factors has to be in play, and that's declared by the chair. The Attorney General in 940 CMR laid out certain technologies, basically phones. You can use video hookups, but they didn't specify any specific technology. But I put in the policy that it just has to be one of the ones specified by the Attorney General, and the conference calling is one of those, which we'll use here.
You could use Skype.
You could use Skype. You could use those types of
Video
conferencing, yes. The chair or the person authorized to serve as chair has to decide if there are any technical difficulties, how to deal with them. So it puts the responsibilities in the hands of the chair to deal with those types of technical difficulties should they arise. And then there are certain procedures that you have to follow in terms of allowing for remote participation. The member who wishes to participate remotely, as soon as is reasonably possible, has to notify the chair or the person authorized to serve as chair of their desire to participate remotely and the reason for that remote participation. At the start of the meeting, the chair announces the name of the member who's participating remotely and the reasons for why they need to participate remotely. That information has to be recorded in the meeting minutes. Any votes taken during the meeting in which someone is participating remotely have to be by roll call vote. A member participating remotely may also participate in an executive session, but at the start of such executive session, the person participating remotely has to declare that no one is present or is able to hear what they're saying at their remote location. And finally, when feasible, the chair is responsible for distributing to remote participants in advance of the meeting copies of any documents or exhibits that are used in the meeting that's taking place.
It raises a question, if I may, and that has to do with if a document is available at the meeting and you have a means of receiving it, either by the internet or by fax, would that, I think that would probably count as well.
Yeah, I would think that would be the feasible piece of getting the document in their hand.
Any questions?
And you can always revoke remote participation in the same manner you adopt it, which is a simple vote.
Okay, so this really just involves people who have a purpose at the meeting, either information, it's one of us that we have to have this vote and one of us can't get here, etc. It's not just open public comment.
No, it's
Right.
It's a member of the
It's
for
a
body.
member of the
a public
body,
body.
of the
Yeah.
public body. And once this is adopted, this will apply to the Assembly, Cape Cod Commission, Health Department
Yeah,
meetings,
anything.
all meetings that take.
You're adopting
All
it for
public
all
bodies.
county public bodies.
Right.
Anything under the county umbrella.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Well, since we are graced with some of the
Well,
assembly
yes,
members
no, I
here,
was going to ask, but I
I
was
was
going to
gonna
ask you
suggest-
first.
Okay, no, I'm good. That was the question I had was
Anybody-
how do you access.
Visiting us from the Assembly, yes, Bureau.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And if you just state your
Sure.
name.
Spiro Mitro-Costas, Assembly Delegate of Town of Yarmouth. The regulations that you're going to be promulgating do not address per diems or travel reimbursements. To the degree that at least some participants in these bodies receive either of one of those two compensations, you might want to clarify the ability to continue to receive those or not. I think at some level, if you've traveled from a distance to participate in a meeting, you've incurred the expense, you should be reimbursed. If you're
Mhm.
staying at your remote location, you didn't travel, you shouldn't be receiving the expense. I'm not aware of any bodies currently that receive a per diem, but you might want to clarify as well, does participation remotely, electronically qualify you for per diem? To the degree that it's not a large expense today, it may be overlooked, but as we move on towards these types of meetings becoming more and more frequent, eventually you're going to bump into this, I think.
Well, just to clarify, you don't get a per diem, you get your mileage allowance. So
If you
if you
request it.
travel, you get your mileage if you request
But
it,
you have-
but you're
you
eligible for it.
have to request
If you
it.
don't
So-
travel, you don't get the mileage.
Right. And there isn't a per diem. I mean,
Do
what
we have
it is
any
what
per
it is
diem
for us.
at all? Do we have
We have
any
out-of-state
automatic?
per diems, but they're all based, so there's a $38 per day out-of-state meal per diem, but still based on receipts.
And what I meant was, is there any county employee or special employee, like elected people, who receive an automatic travel reimbursement just because they attended a meeting?
No.
No, nobody.
You get your mileage.
Everyone has to request.
Everybody has to
a
file their
reimbursement.
mileage.
And you have to actually
Right.
do the mileage.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were
have to be
participating remotely from home for one of the 5 reasons, then you wouldn't have traveled, then you wouldn't be eligible for that particular reimbursement for that meeting. It doesn't prohibit you at the next meeting of that public body from them traveling. I don't think the idea is to supplant physical attendance. I think the Attorney General's quite clear on that when they lay out, you have to have these 5.
Very good
They're pretty
reasons.
broad and pretty general, but they sort of suggest you have to have a reason,
Right.
not just,
Not make it
feel
a
like
habit.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Does that address your comment at all?
I would prefer, our specific example at the Assembly is we all receive reimbursement. It's a standardized version so that we don't have to continually submit expense forms. So if you are traveling from Provincetown to an Assembly meeting, you're going to get approximately $22. If you do not travel, then you're not physically at the meeting, you don't get the $22. But if you're on Skype, do you get the $22?
No.
Okay.
No.
That seems pretty self-evident. In the future, if you appoint a board or commission, that you are also incorporating a per diem for participation, does the per diem kick in just because they're on Skype? Now, I'm not opposed to that notion. I just think you should have it clarified in the regulations that you're passing.
Well, perhaps if I might suggest that in our travel reimbursement policy, we might state that travel reimbursement is for the actual travel to and from
think it
any
does say that.
authorized, I
Yeah.
know, but it is, any remote participation by a member of a public body will not constitute a travel reimbursement or something to that effect. Rather than putting it in this policy, I would think it might be more relevant to say that travel reimbursements are not authorized for those who participate remotely. It's kind of a,
I think, I understand,
Yeah.
I think what Spiro's saying, we don't have any of those. It's sort of, he's suggesting something different, so that
Oh.
by participating in a meeting of a public body, we'll pay you $20 every time you participate in that meeting. We don't do that. You are serving as a public servant. You know, most people who
It's
are on
24
public
hours.
bodies get no compensation for it except their travel allowance, so they get their mileage. The only reason I'm a little concerned about that is I can envision a situation where, say, someone who is on the island is trying to travel to the mainland and for whatever reason is delayed, but they're sort of in the process of traveling. They get on their phone, they call the chairman and say, "Chairman, I am stuck on a boat
Right.
in bad weather, blah, 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 and I wish to participate in the meeting." There's certainly an issue that would allow him to participate in the meeting. There's an important vote. He can vote in it. He's still incurred sort of expenses that legitimately he would be reimbursed for, if you see what I'm getting at. I know it's kind of a weird situation, but it may happen.
But on the other hand, you don't want someone that's just coming back from the island calling in saying, I really wanted to participate in that meeting,
Yeah.
but I'm stuck. I mean, it has to be anticipated. Your attendance was anticipated and necessary for a vote or for a discussion. You can't make it, and then that scenario unfolds that you just stated. Otherwise, if they're over there for some other reason, other business, pleasure, and we need them for a vote, anybody, whoever it may be, they can call in and that does not incur
Yeah.
transportation.
Bill had a question.
I'm going to say that I know of a circumstance that you're talking about, because when I was first elected to public office in the town of Harwich, I was elected as a cemetery commissioner, and I received a stipend of $250 a year for being a member, and that stipend was supposed to take care of any travel or incidental expenses that that occurred with the job. So whether I showed up at the meeting or not, I got that.
Right.
At the end of the year, they sent me a check for $250. So I understand that potential exists. However, that was built into the bylaw that set up that set up the commission. When they became an appointed rather than elected body, they took away the money, so that was a different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, usually,
I-
as you just said, it's something where you're being compensated for being a member of the committee, and it's usually whether you show up or not, or you have to show up to a certain number of them.
Yes,
a
makes
certain
sense.
proportion.
Right.
John,
we
John did you want to say
This is
something?
a different question.
Oh, a different question. Related to the same topic?
Yes.
Okay.
Regular public comment, that's all.
Oh, okay.
When we're done.
Oh,
I don't know
all
if
right.
we're done or not with that. with Spiro's
Not with
question.
this. Well, I think that we should maybe consider this and take a look at
How it's written in the travel expense policy.
Yeah.
Well, or
see
two,
how-
or wait, you could just add something in here that says that it doesn't impact travel reimbursement policy, and if no travel is incurred, no reimbursement
Perfect.
is
That's-
provided. We can.
that would be fine.
Yeah.
I think that's appropriate to do that.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. So,
So
Yeah.
do you want to adopt as amended, or do you want me to go back and change them and bring you
I
in?
would suggest we adopt as amended.
Okay.
And I would
Is
second
anyone
that.
comfortable with that? Is it?
Are you making the motion?
No, I'm not making a motion.
All right, well, I will make the motion that
Okay,
we
I'll
adopt
second
as
that.
amended.
Okay.
Okay.
And that
And
means
we
that this
need-
goes into effect immediately.
Yes.
We sh-
So actually we will have 24 hours to get this out to different
Yeah,
departments.
we have, yes. Okay.
At least
Okay.
till next week.
Right.
And you're second?
I seconded it.
All those in favor say
Aye.
aye. Aye, opposed? 3 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Mr. Omen,
Hi, John, I'm from Dennis. This is more of a nuts and bolts question. First of all, I think it's a great policy for you to have because, especially with a board of three, there's a very good possibility that the third vote would be very important on many
They
occasions.
could be sick.
And with your extensive travel to other places. But mine is more of a nuts and bolts question on the audibility of this meeting. If you're going to add audibility of a remote person, okay, I can tell you from my own experience of trying to listen to these meetings, I turned one off in frustration because I couldn't hear anything. Is that the only?
No, there will
there would
be
be,
a conference.
what do you call them?
The
Mark,
conference
there's
call.
Well, we use just the conference,
With a
conference
speaker,
phone.
on
Yeah, with a
speaker?
speaker, on speaker.
But when I tried to do that, literally watch your meetings on TV, I can't hear anybody.
No.
I've actually turned it off in frustration.
I have done the same thing because I was sick a couple of weeks
And
ago
if that's
and I
the
couldn't
only
make
one,
it
that's
and
not
I was
enough.
listening
But-
and I think I tried to text
if
you
you
saying
add-
I
yeah.
cannot hear.
Right. And if you
What
add
you're
a
saying.
remote proportion of that, you must at least do the nuts and bolts of fixing the ability to
Well, John,
hear.
this is what it
Once
says.
it's up
Members of
on
a public
TV,
body who
you
participate
can hear it.
remotely and all persons present at the meeting location shall be clearly audible to each other. The chairman, or in the chair's absence, the person authorized to chair the meeting, shall make this determination. So it's up to the chair to, if there's a technical, and there's also language in here that says
You have
the
to-
person, the chair or the person authorized to serve as chair shall decide how to address technical difficulties that arise as a result of utilizing remote participation. You know, blah, blah, blah.
Well, perhaps this might be the time that we get microphones.
Well, I think we're sort of presupposing a problem that, in my experience, when we have done conference calling, doesn't exist.
Right.
We've done conference calling in 11 and 12 and in here for meetings where we have vendors that want to participate remotely. It's not a public body, so they're not voting, just want a discussion, and it has not been an issue.
And it hasn't been an issue over the commission either, on the ones I've been part of.
But
Yeah.
they have.
John
those-
is talking
Yeah,
about
and they-
something
those conference
different.
phones.
But Mark says that we have those conference
Yeah.
phones too.
Those three-corner phones?
Yep.
Even this one works satisfactorily.
What John is talking about is the reception at home. The
Yeah,
reception at home
yeah,
is a
that's what I'm
function,
saying.
is a function
That's a separate-
of how Comcast supports the delivery.
Or whatever provider you have here, I don't know. But so our experience here is it's been satisfactory for what we're going to do.
David?
For what it's worth, for listening abilities, I've been in the room with you when it's not a problem with the microphone, it's a problem with the commissioner speaking low, which does not translate, because I've also done the same thing going back to review meetings and have had more difficulty than when I was in the room trying to pick it up from what was heard there. So there,
Maybe my.
and especially in this room in the summer when the fan is going, from any position behind that half wall, you cannot be heard when you're kind of speaking lower, just as an observation.
So it behooves us to speak clearly, directly, and audibly
Yes.
as
From the
best
Labanza.
we can. Right.
And maybe we should consider microphones so that would hook
Some
into
point.
this and help that. We'll talk to Steve about that.
I'm looking at a VU readout here of the audio, and it's peaking perfectly.
Again,
Well,
it
I'm
has
just
more
saying
to
it's
do with
not-
the Comcast delivery, because this is a problem that I've had over the years in my own program, where I would see it on the DVD, when I reviewed it, and then when I watched it on television, it's like, what happened? You can't hear anybody on it.
Okay.
Comcast is not supported, and I think there's where the problem is. It's not with what we're doing in recording, it has to do with delivery.
Okay, I think we've belabored this enough, and we'll see how it goes. If it turns out that we need some assistance in the area of audibility, we will pick it up at a later time. Let's move on to
Yeah,
the,
we voted on this one.
Yes.
we already voted on it. We want to talk about the budget revenue discussion.
Okay? So you have that package in front of you that
I know, sorry about that.
put together? I'm sorry? what?
Yes.
Oh, you silenced your phone, you didn't do what you said.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
When you asked everybody to
Shame
do.
on me.
See, do like I say, not like I do.
Right.
It's the chair's privilege.
You hear that?
Okay, so
Okay.
what you have.
I miss it already.
What you
Does
have.
everybody have a copy of this?
What you have in front of you is basically 4 pieces, which I'm going to walk you through. Pat, you asked for a kind of where are we now revenue for FY 2012.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the first page. It also shows what actual FY 11 revenues are for all the budgeted revenues that we had for that particular year. So you can kind of compare those 3 middle columns and get a sense of sort of where we were, where we should be in 2012, and where we actually are. And I'll go through some of those. Bill asked the question kind of when he first got it, oh, we have a $3 million revenue increase in FY 2012. And no, that's because 12 in the middle column is the approved revenue, 11 is the actual. So you see, actually, usually I think what we're saying is revenue comes in a little bit lower than we usually anticipate. And then for 2012, as I said, I've looked at kind of where are we at this point in time. And I put some notes on the other side because oftentimes on many of these revenues, there are billing cycles that lag sort of by several months. I'll note that on the courthouse rental, the state always lags. Usually, if we get the fourth quarter rental payment for that fiscal year, within that fiscal year, we're doing really well. Usually it's deferred to the next fiscal year. And if that happens every year, it's not a problem because it's still you get 4 quarters, but that always lags. So that's why you only see really about a quarter of the revenue that we have in at this point in time. You see the 2 county tax and the Cape Cod Environmental Protection Tax. We're only halfway through the year, so we collect those in 2 payments. The second payment should be due this month, so we'll be receiving that. And I should note that all of these numbers are as of 12/31/11, so it's the end of the first half of the fiscal year. Yeah. You do see it, that's the number everybody pays attention to, the deeds number, and the deeds number is low. We've only collected 43%, so we are behind on our deeds collections. That's been slow, and it's, in all my discussions with Jack and Dave over there, it's probably going to continue to be slow. So.
But our deeds is only 10% of the budget.
Our deeds is... it's
Approximately.
Approximately 1/3.
1/3 of the
One-third
budget.
of the budget.
Yeah, they're thinking of the county tax assessment.
That's right, I'm sorry.
10%. So that's a big number, and frankly, going forward, this is the number, we're gonna have to pull that number down. We're gonna have to tighten the budget up on that revenue number, because it's just not there.
So is that for the present budget or for the one coming?
One coming up, you'll see, is when we get to it. So-
There was an article in the New York Times Sunday too about housing and the housing market and what is it expected to do in 2012. And nationally, there are some who think that it will pick up maybe a little bit, but there's no guarantee that that will happen. But the one thing that will not happen is, according to this nationwide group of experts, is that the home values are not going to increase at all. And that's what we have seen, I think, on the Cape too, is a decrease in the value of properties. So even if they are sold, and if the sales continue to be, I won't say strong, but perhaps moderate, that the sales, the dollar value of those sales is lower, so therefore the tax is lower.
Right.
So even if there are more sales, it's not going to really help us.
Yeah.
So, so we need to have a discussion. I mean, maybe I think you can massage those, and very soon, maybe sometime this month, we could talk about what we're going to have to do over the next 6 months.
Yeah, well, next week Jack is here.
Oh, Jack is here next
So
week,
that'll
so-
be a good time to sort of talk about that.
And how we may have to make some structural changes to the budget this year
Yeah.
in order to come out even, so to speak, at least even.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jack, usually he says, the higher priced properties usually retain their value. They might be moving as much, but that's usually on the plus side. It's usually the million and less, the middle of the market that's really suffered. I mean, the good news
And that's
is rates are
national,
low.
too.
And exactly, it's sort of a national issue. Good news is rates are low, so a lot of people are
That's true.
refinancing. So,
And more foreclosed homes are selling too.
yeah, and those are moving too. So, but
And
that's
there are
definitely
fewer
a low number.
foreclosures, and more foreclosed homes are being sold.
Yeah.
People are actually buying them. So having that conversation, will he be prepared to have that discussion
Oh, yeah,
with us
yeah,
when he comes?
sure.
Okay,
Yep.
that's good. So some of you may want to come next week as well. Okay.
So yeah, we sort of recognize that these numbers low, and we need to, for going forward, especially in 2013, we're going to have to pull that number down. So we're going to have to be tight on the budget. I mentioned the courthouse rental. We just finalized the submission of the court costs. It was about $1.5 million. That'll be going off. That's for next year, sort of thing. So we'll probably have a similar number around that next year. I think it's a little bit higher than that. But you see that the revenue that we receive from the state, and I have to say they've been very good about paying a fairly high proportion of their costs. If we submit $1.5 million, we just about get $1.5 million back. The wild card number has always been the administrative charge that we put in there. We include an administrative charge every year. Some years they pay it, some years they don't. Sort of depends on how much money they have. I will say that for this year, the monies we're receiving this year for fiscal 2010, we're always a year behind, they did pay the administrative service charge that we added. So that was good news. So we'll have to see how that works next year. But that's always a lag. We do receive $500 in purchasing fees for doing work for Martha's Vineyard towns. That's billed at the end of the year. All of our grant contracts are reimbursement grants. So it's sort of hard to tell from a 2012 year-to-date number kind of where you are, although I'd say they are pretty decent. They look pretty good, but you can tell from the FY 2011 actual number that we're pretty good at collecting the numbers that we say in there. I'd say, I hate to point out the weakest one, we can maybe talk to Paul a little bit later, is the Cape Cod Commission one. He does have a couple of grants in there I know that they anticipate getting, but they haven't actually gotten to date. So
For this year.
For this year. You can kind of see that from the 2011 number. And the other thing that you will see, they have pulled down their grant estimation for Mass Highway. Mass Highway's tightening their belt. They're not giving out as much money as they
That
had
was in his
previously.
budget for
Yeah,
next year.
his
You
mo-
could see some of those
Yeah, you'll see it when we get to
projected
the,
changes for the commission.
yeah, we'll see
Yeah.
it when we get to the 4th page. I have their actual revenue estimates in there, and the grant number is down a little bit, so. And then, moving on from the grant contracts, you get all the department revenues, and,
Before we leave the Cape Cod
Yeah, sure.
Commission,
Yeah.
this is a pass-through. This is not money that we, that we hold on to for the county. This is money that they've applied for and they receive.
that funds their
Their
Funds
activities.
their
budget. Yeah,
operation.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so we're just looking at this as being an item in our overall budget because we're also collecting for them the, was it the environmental protection tax?
Correct, yeah, they're treated, although they have a separate fund, Cape Cod Commission fund, they're treated like any other department. You guys do the budgeting for them. So when we get to that point, Bill, I can star sort of on this list here all the Cape Cod Commission revenues. And those revenues will match their expenditure number on the expenditure page.
And two things to keep in mind, they currently have some vacancies. I don't know if they intend to fill them or not. But they also, if you look at even their budget for next year, it's less than this year.
Yeah,
And the other point to make is that for the last 2 or 3 years, they have not received any county funds, which
Right.
they used to receive at least $100,000 a year in county funds. They now operate solely using their own revenue sources. So I think those are important points to make.
Yeah, and of course, part of the thing I think is under discussion is whether or not we would continue to support the rental property.
That's another, well, we are going to
bring
talk
that
about
up.
that.
Okay.
Their rent is $130,000 or $40,000 a year. That's a lot, I think, for
Yeah.
them. So that's something we should think about
Mhm.
in terms of
Exactly.
the space we have up on the hill. Okay.
so just turning to the department revenues, some of these are, as you see, the Cape Light Compact. Those are the revenue numbers that come right out of the Energy Efficiency Fund to support the staff doing the energy efficiency work and coordination work on that. The building rentals are for our space to the DA's office. The Extension Service has various revenues that they incur selling. Oh, they do the calendars. They have revenues from the Coastal Explorer, a bunch of things like that. So you see, those are actually pretty strong. He's already exceeded his amount for the year. Then the next one is the deeds business revenue. That one is less than 50% as well, and that one's been tight. Although I think we can anticipate a little bit stronger over the next 6 months because, as I mentioned, all the refinances. So I'm a little bit more encouraged about that number. But things are slow over there. It was actually, I went over today, and it was actually kind of busy over there, so that's good news. So, yeah, go ahead, Bill. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I have a problem on identifying the Cape Light Compact as a department revenue. I think that, with all of the discussion that we've had about it, I think that in this revenue, examination, that we ought to identify it as being a contract that, that we're managing. We do have to have the county as an entity, since the Cape Light Compact is an intermunicipal agreement and not a thing that can, an entity that can accept and distribute revenue, but identified it as a department, in my opinion, maintains gives an impression, which we've been trying to offset, that indeed it is independent of the county, and I believe that in much like the dredge, which is an enterprise fund, that it could be identified perhaps in line with what Mark Morris had suggested, that it be under some other type of umbrella, so that we can move away from a misimpression that people get because of where we located, in order to let's say to account for what we're getting and what they're giving.
Well, treating the whole, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, treating the whole energy efficiency piece kind of off budget is something that Maggie's been talking about for a while, so.
I think this might be the time to
Certainly
do that.
something you want to consider.
Well, I would like to have that conversation when the Cape Light Compact comes before us, because I think that's when we can have a more in-depth conversation as to what is our role and what should be our role going forward. I mean, bottom line is, for me, my personal feeling about the Cape Light Compact is that it should have some relationship with the county. It's public funds, and it needs some sort of public entity for oversight. And I don't think that it's really in the best interest of ratepayers or those that contribute to that fund to have it otherwise. Cape CVEC is a different entity that we can think of as a separate thing, but I still think that there's argument that there should be some oversight on that is independent of just the body itself.
Mark, what we might want to consider is in categorizing the revenues, have revenues as they relate to the operating budget of the county.
Yeah.
You know, the operation of the services that we actually provide, like the extension service. But then those groups like the compact, the dredge, I don't know exactly, but those two
septic,
particularly,
septic.
just
Yeah,
have
the septic,
separate,
yeah.
Septic is the
just
other,
put them
which
in
is
separate
dedicated.
categories
Yeah,
as,
because they're dedicated.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that it becomes, so that we actually can look at the revenues that actually support our operation of county services,
Right.
and those that are separate have their own category in the overall accounting of the
Yeah, so that's
county budget.
actually a good idea. I can kind of further
And you can
split
just
those
look
out.
through these and
Yes.
Right. And I would suggest to you that since the transactions of the dredge and the Cape Light Compact are all part of the audit process, that there is county oversight by the assemblies, hiring the auditor for the transactions. So there is, there has been and continues to be, let's say, oversight with regard to the activities, at least the financial transactions.
Well, it can have a different title and it can have different code numbers, and they're just pulled out
Right.
separately.
And there's also, I mean, I do think that when the Cape Light Compact, we should actually review some of those comments in the audit, because they do have recommendations on going forward and how to make sure that there's balances, that there's a balance. Yes, there are. If you read the rest of the audit, there are recommendations.
Not with regard to the Cape Light Compact.
I believe there are. But I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to
Well,
point
when
it out.
we
I'm
actually
not going to
look at it,
argue it.
we'll
So
know.
when that comes
Review
before
audit, They
us.
just finished their internal work, so we should be getting draft documents over the next month or so.
Well, and the reason I mention
No.
this, Sheila, is I specifically talked to the auditors about were there any either recommendations or findings with regard to their observations on past audits, and they specifically said that there were not. So
Well,
if there
if
is
you
something
read
in
the
there,
audit carefully, you will see that there are sort of red flags and recommendations going
Red
forward.
There's part of the
comments.
management letter?
Yes,
Or-
the management letter and within the body of the audit itself.
yeah, I guess I must have read a different management letter because I don't recall anything.
Well,
It's
well,
in the
We're not
body
gonna
of the
debate
of
this
the
now.
audit, right?
We're going to get the information and then
informa-
we'll discuss it.
So, which one was I looking at? So I guess we're down to the
To-
dredge.
The dredge.
And the dredge always, the billing always lags sort of the budget because of the time of doing the work, and then the lag time on the billing. Sometimes lag time on the payments. I wouldn't say that as much.
Mark, if we were to get the state to change the window where dredging could occur for all the coastal towns, would that increase the revenue at all? Would the dredge be able to operate more, or would they just have a larger span of time in which to do the work?
It's a little bit of both, I guess I would answer. Certainly because their work schedule is compressed because these windows sort of close in February and then open back up in May or June or whenever it is. Certainly I think we could probably do somewhat more work. Yes, there's no question about that. But they also don't, if they have jobs that are open during these periods of time, February, March, and April, they'll work on them. So it's a little bit of both, I think.
And if I can just say, I have been part of that ad
You're on
hoc
the dredge
committee, on the committee, and they are working very diligently in expanding those windows. The final product hasn't been out there, but they are doing that. And it is, as I say, over 3 years, the relationship is much different than it was that first
Yeah.
few contentious meetings between harbor masters and the state, and they've really kind of come together to work. They've grown. There's been a relationship that has developed, and they've been productive because of it. So I
Just
do think that there's going to be a resolution.
Let me touch on this, because this whole concept of the second dredge has come up. Dennis has asked
Yeah.
a number of times, and some of the issues with Dennis are more that, they have this issue with, we'll do the work in the fall or in the early part of the season, but they don't want us to do it then because they have the shoaling issue then over the course of the late winter and spring. So they try to get us there just before boating season, and the trouble is that's when we really get compressed. So that's become an issue.
Everybody
But,
wants to
but
do
one of the
that.
things about the second dredge, there's two things I guess I'd say. We're going to include in the dredge budget some money, I think $25,000, to do an assessment. Get a consultant in, do an assessment on what's the amount of work that may be available out there for a second dredge. Can the towns, do they have the resources to sort of support it and pay for it? And then the second thing on the second dredge is I've talked to Andy about, are there environmental reasons that you might want to have a second dredge? It's kind of come up that, if you can dredge some of these ponds, they can flush better, blah, blah. We've seen this in, I think, a couple of projects in Falmouth. So he's looking at it from that perspective.
Right.
And I think there may be better funding opportunities through the environmental
I agree.
stream than there are sort of the dredge stream,
Right.
because I think when you hit the dredge purpose stream, the state especially is going to say, well, you already have a dredge, what do you need a second one for?
Right.
So if we can document that the
Yeah.
second one can play an environmental role.
Right,
then-
and help with the wastewater
Now,
issue,
that's a
and maybe
very good
mediate
Point.
some of those.
There's a subcommittee of the Water
mitigate
Quality
issues.
Management Committee in Falmouth, and they're having a meeting Tuesday to discuss the inlet widening of Little Pond and Barnstable,
Yeah,
which would be a dredge operation.
yeah,
And with John Ramsey and others, who are
yeah.
knowledgeable in that area. But you're right, if it turns out that inlet widening is something that could be done in some of the, south-facing communities like that maybe there would be a good
Yeah.
reason to do
Yeah.
that. And then, once you do the inlet widening, I'm assuming that over time it has to be redone.
They have to be redone, yeah.
When there's a storm or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this committee meeting next Tuesday on inlet widening. The whole purpose, of course, is to improve the flow into the estuaries of the ponds rather. These are ponds, to reduce the nitrogen level. So you're right. There could be environmental funds that might help with
Yeah,
that.
and I do think that that's
Yeah.
an approach.
Yeah, so Andy he's going to be here next week, we can talk a little bit.
Good.
Yeah, I think, John, did you have a
I
question?
just wanted to reaffirm, I'm glad to see that there is a $25,000 assessment. It's not just about the town of Dennis. I
No, I
think
know, it's
14 of
not.
the
Right.
15 towns,
Yeah, right.
especially when I had my conversation with Lynn Jackie last month. He envisions a dredge that might be put on a trailer and easily moved to
Yes.
inner harbors like Scorton Creek and Sandwich and many of the inner harbors of Mashpee and Falmouth.
Right.
There's some and Bourne.
Right.
There's some tremendous opportunities there for reducing the total and maximum daily loads in all of our communities and looking at it as a wastewater, not a second dredge, as a wastewater tool.
Right. That's how we're
I
going
think that's
to
a very
approach it,
key.
yeah.
I'm very happy to hear that that's going to go into the budget.
Yeah, we've been talking about it quite a bit, John, and actually, one of the shocking things for me is, for all of the equipment, or most of the equipment that we have, when we acquired back in 96, 97, we got with $1 million state grant. So we got the Ellicott dredge, the boat tender, and another workboat, smaller workboat. So that was $1 million. I asked Wayne, he's thinking of a smaller dredge, as John said, that you can kind of put on a trailer and a truck somewhere. And I said, John, Wayne, what is the cost of that? And he estimates the cost of that dredge would be about $1 million. So it's going to be an expensive endeavor if we can pull it off. And
Maggie
if
brought
you-
that up at our last meeting.
Yeah.
We need the commitment. I mean, we have to.
Yeah.
And Maggie's concern is, if the fee schedule doesn't.
If you have to
We
buy
can't
the
keep it.
dredge and capitalize the cost and build the payment of that into your fee schedule, it's going to get expensive.
It might impact the town saying we can get a better deal. So this is what we want to make sure that it doesn't exceed what towns would feel would be.
Well, if you can pay for it with wastewater
Yeah.
grant
Oh,
or
absolutely.
some sort of a low
Yeah.
interest funding,
Right.
that would help certainly
Right.
a lot. You know what I mean?
That's true. Did you
I'm
have
going to
a-
suggest to you that as we go into this discussion, one of the things that was brought up by your selectman, was it Wayne Bergeron, was that he was convinced that there was enough application of the dredge, to support its use. I think that that's a question that needs to be responded to and
Right.
answered, and if that can be supported, I think that begins the discussion with regard to the feasibility of going forward.
The good news for revenue pieces is the dredge revenue pays for what we spend. It's an enterprise fund, so that's what we do. If we have to adjust it the next year because we didn't take in enough money and we spent too much, that's what we do. We just adjust the rates. So I don't think we've had a rate adjustment though for quite a few years. So. Health lab, you see, actually we're doing pretty good this year, 230,000 out of 500,000. We were a little bit down last year. I think George sees some opportunities here, especially once we can get our relocation done. He sees some opportunities, I think, for the, I don't know the name of it, but the new,
Ion.
yeah, no, there's the, the drug issues in the water supply and those types of things. I can't remember the name.
Which would be very interesting, because I would think that testing for those pharmaceuticals or personal care products.
That's
would be-
exactly it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Would be
yeah,
very helpful.
Exactly. So the next one, sanitarian services as well. That covers our sanitarian services for Orleans. We're doing right now. We've had a long-term contract with the town of Orleans to provide them some support services for health inspector. George is exploring doing that for Wellfleet right now.
Yeah.
So we're not sure we'll make it fit, but we think we can make that work. And you'll see as we get to the last page of this report that I bumped that up because George thinks there might be some opportunities for doing that out there as well. And then septic repair program, again, that's really funded out of the septic repair revenues that we get back from the loan repayments. So that covers Kendall's staff. He has 2 people now on staff, and those cover those. And we do that transfer every.
On the transfer on the repair system and the repair program, you have reported in the past that people are paying up in advance of the of receiving the revenue that supports the program.
Because they can get a lower home equity loan or something. Although, yeah, we said that for a while, and then you signed it to you last week, but not those out of the ordinary. And then I haven't seen any. So. Okay. Maybe a bit anecdotal,
all right.
But that's sort of the answer. If people ask you, well, I can get a better rate doing something else, the rates we charge are set statutorily, so we can't change them. We could look at maybe doing some amendments to Mass General Law that would allow us to have a little bit of better rate piece, but they're set statutorily. We can't change them. So you sort of have to tell
And
people,
what is
yeah,
the
if you can
rate
do
now?
something better. I think it's 5%.
5%.
Yeah. And so, yeah, now that rates have come way down, it's not as advantageous for some people.
We should follow up on that conversation and see if there is legislation and maybe speak to Senator
Maybe
Wolf
not
about
less
that.
than or
and-
not more than instead
Exactly.
of
Instead of
specific
setting a
amount.
hard number, you could do maybe a range.
Yeah, they would
range.
give us a range,
Yeah.
right?
Fire training, you see at that number, I believe, is such a low number because of a billing lag, so we have to get them to bill a little bit more promptly. Cape Cod Commission actually had very strong regulatory fees revenues for this fiscal year. You see that number is even over what their estimate is for the whole year. The license plate receipts we transfer out of for the rest area at the end of the fiscal year, so we haven't done anything at this point in time yet. Miscellaneous receipts, those cover everything from telephone revenues to vending machine revenues, all kinds of weird things like that. Interest income is pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory, although interest rates are a lot lower than they were at one point in time. And then finally, the Cape Cod Environmental Protection Fund Reserve. That's the reserve funds that the commission uses for their budget. There's several pieces in there. There's the pure reserve. They also have in this year's $200,000 from the legal reserve for the Anderson and Krieger piece, and I think they might have had something in there for the building.
Now, is that a reserve fund that's separate, or is that?
It's their reserve out of the Cape Cod Environmental Protection Fund, the Cape Cod Commission Fund.
But don't they keep track of it in their budget as well?
Yeah,
They do, and then at the end of the year, they have a reserve set aside, just like we do, and they notify you of that.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it probably is in the treasurer's report, yeah, under the fund, so you'll see those numbers in there. And then the bond issue revenues, we are planning on doing a bond issue this fiscal year, and the whole capital fund will be replenished when we issue the bonds. So that's really an in and an out, or a pass through, as Bill would say. So that's sort of the picture of where we are now. You see some behind. The most two significant ones that we need to pay attention to, obviously, are the Registry of Deeds tax, the excise tax number, and the Registry of Deeds business number. Those are such big pieces of the budget. So you mentioned, and helpful for the folks from the assembly here, and I'm not sure, Marshall was there, I think. I don't know if Teresa was there, or and John was there certainly. But the presentation that I did on the treasurer's report sort of helps you walk through, and what I can do is share it with them as well. And what you saw it, because what I did was, because this question comes up, I looked at the treasurer's report and what the general fund balance was at the beginning of fiscal 2011 and what it was at the end of fiscal 2011, and then walk you through how you got to that change, what changed between the beginning of the fiscal year and the end of the fiscal year, and it kind of shows you the pluses and the minuses that we always talk about. You can't just look at the minuses, you can't just look at the pluses. You have to look at everything in the big picture.
Right. So we're going to...
What I'll do is I can send that, why don't I send that to Janice and then ask her to distribute it to the assembly as a whole?
I'll ask Janice to do finance.
And I can come back and give another presentation.
I think that would be
Yeah, I think
helpful,
it's
since we're
always helpful.
in that mode right now.
Yeah.
Revenues and expenses.
Even though it's
It's a
the
year
same
removed.
body as the new body. Everybody's in place, but it's always a good reminder. You're
Yeah.
still just learning and getting all of these things under your belt, and it makes more sense a year later, especially if you're new, to hear it again.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, sir.
Bill?
Why is there $2,000 difference between the figure on the back page and the figure on the front page for
One's the third.
revenue for 2012?
One is
Well, let me
projected.
get to there. I don't know yet. So let me get to there. I don't know.
It says 2013.
Oh, John.
I mean, there's some staggering deficits that are going on, and I'd rather have you chew on them before I weigh in. But one of them I wanted to actually ask about was
Are
the
you
fire
on
training
page
academy.
one?
I'm still on page one.
Okay.
The fire training academy got blushed over. It had only, $89,000 last year, and
Right.
it was literally doubled for this year. And I see no evidence that they're going to be able to even match last year. I think it's time that the commissioners look at it as an enterprise fund. It's wonderful to give all, and I don't deny the greatness of the services they give, but I'm not sure that we can afford to do that anymore as a county in the present condition without seriously looking at making it an enterprise fund. I know that more than half of the towns, when they do their Fire 1 and Fire 2, including Falmouth, I believe, they send them to Stowe anyway. They drive right by Hyannis and go to Stowe because it's in the contract. So we're not being effective with that either. We're not getting even half of the firefighters to stay on Cape with that. And I know they do other many burn units and everything.
Right.
I'm not denying what they do, but
Yes.
we have to look at that as a structural deficit.
That's a good point. As towns are doing...
No,
No? You don't agree?
object that it's a good point.
Oh, okay.
That you can't sort of pick and choose. You may have a policy discussion about whether you think the Fire Training Academy is a valuable service to the Cape or not. That's a legitimate discussion. But to frame it as they're not making the money that supports their cost, the expenditure side is not valid. We haven't put them under that requirement, and we never have. And I don't. This seems to have come up where we were talking about making an enterprise fund. In the time that I've been here, which is now 18 years, I don't ever remember that conversation. In fact, it was actually quite the opposite. When we moved from Tom Manley to Lee doing this as director, we specifically, a previous board had said to him, we want you to do more service on the Cape and less off Cape. And the off Cape is the one that generates the revenue. So we've kind of put them in this little box where, no, we don't expect them to raise the amount that we're spending. But we do that for every department, sort of subsidized. They don't bring in, the Health Lab doesn't bring in the revenues that covers their
All
full
their
costs.
expenses.
So I just want to be careful how the
Right.
argument is framed.
My point, where I said it was a good point, was the fact that there are towns that are sending people off Cape. And what I was going to suggest is, since towns are now in the process of getting their budgets together, that we let them know, to send a letter again. These are the services that the Fire Training Academy can provide your community and your fire service at this cost or no cost or whatever it is, so the towns will start, especially as they're negotiating their contracts with the firefighters, to maybe get some of that out of the contracts and say, we want to utilize the county. They have a reputable educational program, and it's equal to what the state provides. It reduces the transportation, whatever it is. But we notify the towns to really think seriously about incorporating the Fire Training Academy in their considerations.
Right, and if
It's hard for me to
That was
believe
my
that
point.
you would have a contract with the town and the fire department that would say that they would add to their cost. When they send somebody up to Stowe, they're paying for the man's time or the woman's time to go up there.
It's always overtime.
It's always overtime.
Housing.
Regardless of
All
what
of
it
that.
housing
is.
and
It doesn't make any sense. And maybe the people of Cape Cod need to be aware of the fact that we have this service that is qualified, is certified to do that, and why is this money flowing off the Cape?
If
And
I-
in many instances can bring the service to the town. I mean, sometimes they go directly to the town with the people who are working. That doesn't always work because they get called out. But nevertheless, that's up to the chief or somebody to make arrangements that if they have to bring people in on days off, they pay overtime, but they pay it anyway.
And if I can say, I think that what John's speaking to is that somewhere in the contract, there is this thing that regardless of what training they get on the Cape, they still have to go that somehow state official certification. We've discussed this the last
Yeah.
3 budget hearings that I've been in, that we should, try to amend that legislation. I know that there's been attempts to it. It's not just affects our fire departments, it's a state sort of legislation, so it's something for everyone. However, John, just to let you know, there is a pursuit of other vendors that we can have use the fire department. For instance, Mass Military Academy is much more interested in the services because they can see that there is a savings, and they'll get the same training for their cadets on ships. So that discussion and relationship has started, and hopefully will bring in more revenues and even some improvements to the academy. So things are moving in that direction.
I just think it's highly optimistic that we doubled the projected revenues under the circumstances that March has dictated.
Well,
That, I agree with
basically-
you, John. There's no question that, Lee, we need to talk to Lee about, how much revenue can the place really bring in. That I don't dispute that.
Anticipated structural deficit.
Sort of ironically, if we do more of the firefighter one that they're going to Stowe for now, that won't increase the revenues and actually may have the impact of lowering the revenue because there's less opportunity to do out of county training.
But doesn't this then, to some extent, address the question of, and especially with the commission that you set up, what is the county doing? And I think Bill, to some extent, mentioned it. I think you really need to I don't want to say force the towns, but if you have a county service that people are going off Cape for, and that we are subsidizing, then this is a perfect example of, I'm not sure this county service, I'm not saying to get rid of it, but I think you need to seriously look at this, because obviously we are not doing it more cost effective, whatever they need. And I think this is a perfect example of why you really have to take a look at this. I mean, and I've always, and I think it's great, but I am concerned that of the years that I've been on the assembly, they have got less and less money. They're going all up to Stowe, and I used to live near there, so it's a gorgeous, if you've ever been there, it's a gorgeous thing. I don't, you know, I didn't realize that the legislation that they have to go there, but we have to, I think, take a look at this, because I don't know how long we can continually support this.
No,
Mark, I also noticed in some of the town services reports that they do confined space training for firefighters. But they could also do it for DPW employees. They
Yeah,
need to have
yeah,
confined space
yeah, we've
training.
talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, they
that
have
would
to be
help.
more
Actually,
aggressive.
A few
You know,
years
things-
ago, they did one for MWRA, because they were doing the big tunnel up and,
And they have a great setup up
Yeah.
there for confined space training. And they could spread that out
Yeah.
to people in the water departments and sewer and all that who have to get down into those
It has to
trenches.
be an effort. I agree that we can charge to have a
So
more
we
increased
haven't
effort on
talked
this.
yet with Lee, but
he's in next week.
he comes in next week, so we can have this discussion with him next week. Teresa?
I just want to ask about Mr. Murder. I think you said something about billing lag when you were talking about the fire training. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious, how accurate is this on the amount of billed services? And are we looking at a process issue in collections, or an actual issue of not enough services being billed?
I think it's both, actually. I'm sure there's a billing lag, because you only see $300 to $800.
I mean,
I'm
that's
sure he's done more
really
than
jumps
that.
out at you. It's like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
understand why that you'd flag that.
Yeah.
So he can be prepared to respond to
So
that next
he's
week.
got a structural problem about, we need to think of ways to raise more revenue, period, because there's no way he's making his 180, as John points out, there's only 90 of all of last year. But I think there's also a billing lag that he's got there too.
That's another whole process issue that's equally as important.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of the picture of where we are at the moment. And
What
then
about miscellaneous receipts?
miscellaneous receipts, I mentioned that
Oh, you
it
did?
has everything to do with, it's anything from any phone revenues that we get to vending machine revenues, any kind of weird things that.
How do we get phone revenues?
Well, we used to have the, whatchamacallit, but I think the DA and.
What's whatchamacallit?
Payphone.
Payphones. There's no
Oh, I
payphones
see.
there. So you can get payphone revenue.
I'm like, okay, I'm almost supposed to
But
guess.
those are all gone. But now the DA, I believe, reimburses us for phone call, whatever
okay.
reimbursements we get for that.
All right, I see.
From
Okay.
Okay.
External use of phones, I think it's vending machine revenue, whatever else.
And that I get, but I didn't get
Okay,
the phones.
so-
All right.
Next page? No? Are we done?
Yeah, next
So
page.
this is
Then
just,
I
yeah, this is your chart.
Then I sort of look at historic registry of deeds revenues, and I do it in those are the next two charts. And we just sort of look at, this goes back to 96 and the projection on 2012, and what I did was basically just double the 2012 half-year number to give us, I did do some analysis on how deeds numbers come in first half of the year, second half of the year, but there's no, it really varies. They're sort of all over the board, so there's no way of saying, well, second half is bigger than the first half. You really can't tell. So I just doubled it and come up with a projection. So
It will probably never be up to 9,000
Man,
or 9 million rather.
so there you see the variability. Well, it certainly will be at some point in time in the future,
But not in the
because
next
values.
5 years.
But yeah, that's big. That's
I mean, we're looking at, I think, a 5-year flat line.
yeah. And this is sort of for the special commission and for you,
Mhm.
kind of considering going forward. This is one of the issues, sort of long term, that the county faces.
Recurring,
It's-
sustainable revenues.
Yeah, exactly. Its revenue stream can be, as you can see, highly variable.
Sustainable.
And, right, and then it has a tendency to reach some kind of, we think, status point, but is that status point enough to, serve what the county needs to do?
Exactly.
So that's part of the issue.
Big questions for us to respond to.
So you see the variability there, and it's too bad about the good old days. They're not here anymore, but you see it peaked in 2005.
Well, I remember the feeding frenzy.
Yeah, well, we were all fighting.
yeah, but now that we
Oh, I remember
we
that.
can think of all the other things that maybe should have been done.
Yeah,
with that
exactly.
money as opposed
You know,
to
and
being at each other's throats.
it's interesting you mention that, because when we didn't do the county tax assessment increase, we didn't do one, I think, from, if my memory serves me, 99 to
2009.
06, 07,
Yeah.
05. There was really $1 million that we sort of, hate to say, left on the table, but
Right.
that's what we did. We left it on the table. You'll never get back.
Right.
That is to say, if you look at the county tax assessment number now, it would be $1 million higher.
Yeah, and I think the first time that went into effect was 2009. Was that
You
first
know,
time?
it would be really interesting. I was talking to Bud Dunham and
Bob Lawton.
and Bob Lawton about this. I was looking at other. We are unique. I mean, there's no other county like Cape Cod. But when you look at other counties, and I looked at two that I used to live in, Montgomery County in Maryland, Fairfax in Virginia, which are probably two of the. Not that we were ever rich, but they are the richest counties.
They're very
But the
progressive,
property tax income last year in Fairfax County, Virginia, was like $3 billion. And I was saying to Bob, the one ex-town manager and current town manager, we should take a look at every single municipality, every source of revenue that comes into Cape Cod, and just make it one number and see what that one number is. You know, if we and what are we actually, and what is it costing us, in a sense, if we have all this revenue,
Yeah.
and then look at what the total expenses are Cape-wide for
Right.
everybody, and just see what we're really looking at. And if you really want to talk about regionalization and efficiencies, just look at the actual gross numbers and expenses all the way around.
George Bryan actually developed those figures on a
Yes.
regular basis,
And I
and I
can
think
tell
they're
you what
over at
they
the
are.
Assembly right now.
And the expenses of all the 15 towns roughly, the municipal governments, are $1 billion.
Mhm.
If you add the 15 town
Right.
budgets, Barnstable alone is $160 million.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. But see, that's why I have never attended your special commission on the county, because I would say to them, you're wasting your time. The thing you need to do is dissolve the towns, and we become like in the South, and it'll never happen. You guys, they're futzing around at 25 million. The real money is at the town level. But, you know, that's just not going to happen. And but you look at Fairfax and Montgomery, they're real counties in the
Yeah, I
sense
know.
of government.
I
See,
understand that.
Yeah.
There's no
Right.
comparison.
No comparison.
No,
It's
but
totally
it's
different.
what is interesting is they look at a whole county in terms of the total revenue in a county. We have never looked at the total number. I mean, maybe you have.
George Bryan
but-
always did.
Yeah,
We have 20 fire chiefs.
Yeah.
Right.
Think
Right.
about
And
that.
and that's and if you, I agree with you, but I think that if you did look at that picture, then you could look at those services. I mean, we know that there are town managers on the Cape that are willing. Could you please regionalize? You know, take this and take this off me, my assessor or my health agent or my whatever the case may be. But if that was really laid out and you looked at, you know, what the savings would be for the towns per service or per function, they could then start saying, you know what, that doesn't really have anything to do with our control or our character or our own governing of our town in its interests.
Marcia,
These
if you
are
look at-
added on things that we
Don't
have, you know, historically had, but as times get tougher and resources are less, do they really define us? And that's where the argument may be able to be made
And it
for
could
more
be done
regionalized
at
services.
the
Not
lower
everything.
Cape, the middle Cape, the upper Cape, or something. I don't know. It's just,
Right.
it's a conversational point at this point.
Right.
you know? And then we need to
A
move on.
medium-sized city has about 220,000 people. I think a useful figure of merit would be, what does it cost to run a medium-sized city of 220,000 people versus what it costs us to run Cape Cod?
Right.
Taking into account what Pat is suggesting about the geographical, issues with regard to how do we organize the 400 square miles that we have, say in order to deliver what I'd call those sustainable regional services that do not affect community character. And I think if we take that approach, and I think that if you read the article I wrote for the Barnstable Patriot a couple of weeks ago, then that's essentially what I'm suggesting, that we look at what we can do that does not change why you live in Mashpee and does not change why I live in Harwich.
Oh, yeah, I'm not advocating dissolving
Yeah.
towns. I'm just saying is that
Support.
it's almost $1 billion for the municipalities, and I agree with Sheila, but I don't think. I think we've tried that discussion for the regionalization, but it's just I don't see it that there's really any effort. I mean, you could regionalize, God forbid, town clerks. You could make 3 major, there's a lot of things you could do, but it's just really hard.
Transition.
And it is,
It's a
transition
while.
is immense.
It can't happen all at once.
Of
There
course
must
it can't.
be
It's sort of happening at the edges.
Right.
But
What's
it's very,
been
very
happening,
small.
it's come a long way, but it's at the edges, there's no
It's
question
a
about
time
that.
for everything.
That's right.
Okay.
We're moving there.
Next
That's
page.
about
Where are we now?
So, yeah, so that gives you the picture pretty much
Of
since
the
I've been
deeds
here,
revenue?
of the deeds revenues. Then I shortened the time frame, and I started doing this because of these spikes. So you try to shorten the time frame to get a better sense of what the trend line really is, and that's what those 2 black lines show. So basically what that trend line means is we sort of probably pull down our deeds revenues for next year.
Definitely.
So things are
If
going to
it
be
becomes a
tight.
bumper
Yes,
year, then that'll be better.
definitely. We need to be conservative.
So then,
You don't
What's
like, you
coming out
like
of your
that
mouth?
word? Well,
God.
I think conservative budgeting is the thing to do
Right.
in this
So-
time.
Programmatic budget.
Yes, well, we'll get to that.
We'll get to
but
that,
that
too.
takes a while to get to that.
But so you
but
need to
Mark's
know kind
working
of what
on
you
that.
might have in your hands going forward. So that's what this page does. We looked at, what,
Oh, this is for 2013.
this is the
Right.
2013 and what
This is
will
proposed.
you potentially have at your disposal for revenues. So county tax and the Cape Cod Commission tax go up 2.5%. You see the deeds number. I'm pulling that down to 7. That's the number we probably need to talk about a little bit. Courthouse rental, $1,600,000 is probably a decent number given where we were this year for $1,550,000. I think that's not a bad number. The rest say the same. The grants I looked at per requested, where the what the grant revenues built into the requested numbers were. Not a whole lot of changes there. Just to go over in the extension services, the coastal geologist and aquaculture grant. Health department has the tobacco grant and the medical reserve corps grant money that we do. I would note that George has foreseen that the tobacco staff will increase. We used to have 1.5 people. Now we have one person, Bob Collette, and we think we're going to go back to another 1.5 person, Bob Collette and Patricia Lindauer. So I built that into the budget. Cove, I'm assuming both the same grant, which we've always gotten, and the additional piece from DSS. So I'm assuming that right now. And then, as I mentioned, Cape Cod Commission, you see their grant number is down a little bit. And that's mostly because of the Mass Highway.
Get back
Mass
to
Highway.
Children's Cove and the revenue from the grant contracts.
Mhm.
It seems like every year we go through a struggle with regard to, are we going to get it or we're not going to get it? And
2 years ago, we had the struggle, yes. This year, no, we got it, and we knew we were going to get it.
Okay, so we didn't, it wasn't a matter that we were presenting to the assembly and saying that we were anticipating getting it, however, we were putting it in there so we didn't have to come back for supplemental.
I think for this year, 2012, if I remember right, and Stacy's going to be here later,
Yeah.
she said, no, I'm pretty sure we're, like 99.99% sure that we're going to get it. But 2 years ago, you're absolutely right. I think we didn't put it in, and then we got it, and then what happened is it freed up this money that
Right, and then you just
Start
gave it
fighting
right
about
to,
it,
yeah,
yeah.
it opened up.
So
And then-
basically, I'd say build the default to avoid the fight is put the money in and assume you're going to get it. That way you don't. That way you have 2 options. If you don't get it, you have to cut the budget or you have to find some money.
Yeah, and I also think that what we learned there is you just don't automatically like roll it back into the same, like you have this money now, what can be done here
Yeah.
and where should it go?
Yeah. So
What about the license plate funds? Don't we expect those to be a little bit less?
they are, but they're off budget. We're not.
They're off
talking
budget.
about
That's
that.
right.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
guys-
that's true.
this
So it shouldn't
year-
even be in there, you're right.
They're in the Cape
Well,
Cod.
they're not.
Cape Cod Commission.
They're not in the budget.
No, but
They're not in
Cape
the
Cod-
budget.
They're in the Cape Cod Commission revenue budget.
No,
No, this
they're
is the
not.
last year of the 350, so
250.
there isn't anything
No,
next
350.
year.
He's projecting
350, and then they
240,000.
If they are, then they're built into his grant revenue
Right.
piece.
Oh, okay.
But I know this year was the last year of the 350.
Mhm.
It was a three or 350. So, but those are off budget. What happens is they come to you and do the budget at the beginning of the year.
So we want to try to end by noon if we can.
Yeah, sure. So the other numbers, the ones you have to pay attention to, I think, is the deeds business revenue, and I pulled that one down as well because I'm concerned about that.
Registry deeds, yeah. What's
I did
the
pull down
resource
fire
development?
training because I think they're off, and I think we're too high up on that. But I'd like to hear from Lee a little bit more on that.
Mhm.
Resource development, why is that a blank?
It's not.
15,000.
Cape Light Compact is a blank because we're talking about putting them off budget, like Bill was saying earlier.
Mhm.
15,000 is resource development. Usually on their grants, they build in a administrative fee when they can. That's what the 15,000 for RDO is, for grants that they secure. Commissioner's office has a
The
0.
one I'm looking at shows a budget of revenue for 2012 of $1 million and for 2013 a blank.
Yeah, Cape Light Compact.
Yeah, Cape Light Compact.
Your eyes
Oh,
are-
okay, the
you need
line
a-
is
yeah, you
different,
need a
sorry
line,
about
yeah.
that. Oh, I see,
And that's what I just
okay.
said, because we were
I
talking
got
about
it, okay.
pulling
Yeah,
them
I see
off
it too.
budget because
That's what
of
you
this
said.
whole
My glasses back
brow.
on. Okay.
The dredge number, I don't have a dredge number yet, but it will match whatever the dredge budget comes out to be. Health lab, I'm gonna hold that at 500, even though I think next year we'll be in the new space. I think there'll be a trade-off between the new space and enhanced revenues and the time and transition it takes to get to the new space. So I think I just leave it the way it is. Sanitarian services, I talked about that because it's expanded health agent services. Septic betterment is what it is. That's what it's in the health budget. I pulled down Fire Training Academy. The Cape Cod Commission one increased because of the increased regulatory fee
fees.
revenues. Yep. License plate rest area, that is what it is, sort of thing. So, and then just to note on the Cape Cod Commission Reserve, of the 489, they're doing 100 from legal and 25 from their building reserve and the rest from their general reserve number.
And I just, if I may, if I just wanted to go back to the sanitation services
Yeah.
for the members of the delegation, it looks like there's quite an increase there.
Yeah.
But that is really taken into consideration that there is now a jail, our renovated space up here.
That's for, we're assuming Wellfleet and
Outsourcing.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry,
health
the
inspector.
outsource, this,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry,
the
we're
health
talking about,
inspector.
that's
Yeah.
right, we're talking about revenues here.
Yeah.
I just,
Talking
but
about
there is,
inputs, yeah.
yes, okay, that's the next
They're
conversation.
outsourcing. to us,
Basically,
yeah.
that 51,422 increase, George thinks he can get one of his staff people, doesn't need to increase staff, and he can get one of his staff people
I'm
to
sorry.
cover it by doing outside
Okay.
stuff.
So, if we eliminated the Cape Light Compact, and does that 1,245,000, that includes? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, basically what that says, you're sort of on track. Take the million for the Cape Light Compact off
Out.
budget. So the 1,600,000 that you're down, you're really down effectively you're down about $625,000. That's what you're gonna have to find in your budget somehow.
And you might make an argument that we have to get rid of the dredge since it's an enterprise fund and doesn't contribute to the operation.
But its impact on the budget bottom line is 0, Bill, it's the
Okay.
same, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So basically, there will be some savings from the health insurance piece, we'll be able to save some money there.
But we have
But it's gonna
to
be
be
tight.
careful about how, that's only a one-time
Well, you'll have to put
boondoggle.
25% aside.
But even so, it's only this year. You won't see it next year
No, you won't.
because the expenses will stay the same. So I think
Or
we
they'll
should
go
be
up.
careful about how we handle that
Yeah,
that
With an eye to next
that
year.
reduced expense, if
Yeah.
you will. It's really a reduction in the expense for healthcare.
Yeah,
But then next year, that reduction that we see this year is probably going to be the same or more next year.
right.
So there are some savings this year, and we should actually find out what those actually are, and look at them very carefully and be conservative about whether we spend them or whether we hold them in reserve. and try to keep, in other words, they're not a recurring revenue.
Right.
It's a one-time thing, so we
Right.
should be cautious about how that money is used, if at all. Maybe it should be put aside in our reserve account. or
Okay, and if
something
you,
like that.
I don't disagree with
Yeah,
that, but
I
if you
know,
put a
I just-
reserve in your reserve account, it makes your job much more difficult, because you still have to cut the budget.
Because what?
You still have to cut the budget,
Right. Oh, I understand. But
so you're gonna
our
have to make
budget,
some
when
hard
we first
decisions.
came here, 4 years ago, was 27 million?
No,
Well,
we've
26
sort of been
close.
stable,
We've been
pretty
stable
much.
about
It's been about the
25,
same.
maybe 26. We haven't
It's
been
been
Maybe
about-
26.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
now we're
26.
proposing
Really been
23.
kind of the same.
So
Yeah.
that's a significant reduction
It is, there's no question
in
about
a
it.
matter of 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. Part of it is circumstantial, the jail and those kinds of things, and some of
True.
the pass-throughs that we had in there. But yeah, it's going to be tough, and so, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I didn't want to do it today. I have a list of issues, and you're going to hear some of them today when you hear from IT and Cape Cod Commission, because one of the big issues that's out there is this whole idea of, the Cape, the Open Cape will have the ability to offer kind of these services to the towns in the form of, well, we don't know what form they're going to take,
Mm-hmm.
but the towns are sort of asking us, can you kind of coordinate the
Right.
provision of that service? So that's a need that we're going to have a hard time filling, but I
Right.
think it's going to be an important need.
Right, and I think it's just now time, God bless you, it's just now time for, I think Open Cape has had to do all of the work that it's had to do and get all of these things done, but now it's time to really include the towns, because it's going to be the next phase. And I know some towns felt like they were being, we're not part of this discussion. It wasn't really ready to go there yet until you could see the whole landscape. So, and I think that their involvement in those discussions will be helpful.
It actually came up at the December Town Administrators Luncheon, and it was very well attended. They were sort of talking about the special commission stuff, but actually Charlie Sumner sort of raised this question and said, how is, the county, I think, is going to be asked to kind of
Right.
coordinate this thing from Open Cape, and it may be the e-billing, and it may be all these other potential things that sort of we're not aware of yet out there, but we sort of have to figure out how we want to
Yeah,
coordinate.
and we need to do that
Right.
because if there are savings for them, they need to know that as
Yeah,
well for
exactly.
their budget.
Somebody
So,
needs to say, okay, town, here's what it is.
yeah, here's the
Do
menu.
you want to participate? At what level do you want to participate? And then kind of put those pieces.
Big.
And there'll be a cost for that participation, but
Yeah.
it'll
But
probably
lower.
be significantly less than what they're currently paying for
Yeah.
that service.
And sort of what all of this, if you kind of take it all together, even long-term sort of suggests is, right now, given the structure that we have and the revenues that we have, the only way to put all this stuff together is sort of a fee for service, which is what we've been doing. That's what we do for the building inspector. We do subsidize that a little bit, but it's sort of a fee for service thing.
Ed Centio and Dan Gallagher came to the Falmouth Selectmen's meeting the other night, and Ed gave that whole presentation
Right, on the e-billing thing,
on
yeah.
the
It's really-
e-permitting and thing. It's just
There's a lot of
absolutely
potential.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the potential.
So hopefully
using-
we'll get part of that grant. that he's-
Yeah.
Yes,
the
that
regional
would be
grant.
very helpful. And what is he asking for? This is a $4 million
It's the
state
$4 million.
grant
I
on,
It's available.
that's
It's available.
available
I
for
don't know how much
innovation.
his grant application was. I don't want to say.
I think it was $1 million
I
something.
was
Was it
gonna
$1
guess
million
$1
one
million
or
bucks or
two,
something.
something like that?
Yeah, I'm not
But a
not
lot
sure
of
either, but-
towns now, I think about 8 or 9 towns have signed on, and they have, it's due the 17th. So they have to get all the other
Yeah,
towns
if they
on
can
board.
get all
But
towns
we've
on
just
board.
gotten some letters recently from Eastham and
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
couple other towns.
There have been questions raised, at least in Harwich, because they've had an ongoing, let's say, evaluation committee on it, and they are very supportive of the equity piece, but are very concerned as to whether or not they would be making a commitment to, let's say, to support Open Cape, and then have Open Cape not really be in a position to, let's say, to support them on an ongoing basis. So that's a question that if we're going to get into this, I think we should have the same concern that that we are part of an ongoing viable operation. Open Cape is a highway. The ramp system. There have been questions that have been raised in Harwich about, is it going in a place that supports the commercial development piece? It is going by the public safety. It is going by, and there will be an interconnect because the library is across the street from the from the town hall, so town hall can break into it. But they're raising these questions about if we're presenting it as being a benefit to the commercial community, as being how it's going to be supported going forward. That has not been answered completely.
Well, as I say, I think that's
we
where
have a
this
letter from Dan
conversation
Gallagher
starts now.
that he just sent to us. We should read this letter.
It's sort of on this whole issue about
Yes,
doing
and we
this
should.
support and
It's this
stuff.
whole issue about, because Open Cape, once that network is created, they're out of the picture in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
the services.
I think Bill sort of correctly said
And-
they're the conduit.
That's
Yes.
right.
And then there's these
They're
peripheral
providing the
things.
infrastructure.
And we
Yeah.
can make it what we want it
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be,
Right.
and
We
the towns
can
have
be
to,
a
that's where the
partner
towns
in the
then come in and
servicing
say that.
Of it, that's what he wants to talk to us about. So we should get that on our agenda fairly soon. We want to end now because we have budget starting at 12:30. Do you have any other comments you'd like to make before you leave?
And you're welcome to
Spiro?
come back.
Sure, but I expect we'll be back. I think we're heading in the right direction, but I would like to say that it is your prerogative as commissioners to build a budget on the expense side as you see fit. I think it's our role as the assembly to not so much criticize how we're spending the money, but what we agree on is the money, is the revenue coming in. So this was helpful. In general terms, I would still be cautious. We seem to have raised $21.5 million in 2011. If we're lucky, we'll raise $23.5 million in 2012. And you're projecting to spend $23.5 million in 2013. That does not buck the trend line, at least. However, we will have spent $1.5 million more in 2012 than we brought in. So we kind of have $1.5 million missing, and it would be, I think, it would behoove us to look at the 2013 budget as, if we're not going to completely stop the bleeding, which I hope we do, we also look at putting some of that money back.
There's
This-
also an increase that you can still do with deeds tax. We still have several percentage points. The last time that was raised was in 2009,
Yep.
and that was
there's
1/8
still
of
more
1%.
I know, are you thinking of doing
No,
that?
we're
No,
not.
I'm just
No,
saying
and
that that
I-
is a revenue. That's something
No,
you can
but
think
we're not
about.
looking at that right now, and raising the.
Mashpee.
No, we're not
I-
thinking
I-
about
I
it. I'm
just-
saying it's a
not.
part.
We're
It's
not.
I
it's
want to
available.
comment on what Spiro said, and you're absolutely right. Remember too, this is just a draft. This is the
Right.
first look at what the revenues are, and we're still looking at what our departments are coming to us with the expenses. But I can tell you, from my point of view, this next year's budget has to be extremely conservative. And we should not look at spending even the revenues we think we're going to have. I think that we have to look at not only what we think is available to us, and maybe go a little bit less than that. But anyway, that discussion will go on as we go through this process.
And I think the department managers are prepared for that. They've
Absolutely.
sort of been
Hmm.
prepared that this is
Right.
going to be tight.
Right. There may be vacancies we can't fill, things
Yeah.
like that. We have to look at that very
Even by
carefully.
this, you have to budget $1.5 million less than last year.
That
So
may
you're
well
looking
be,
to cut.
that's very possible.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why. Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
Yeah, so let's
600,000.
try and wrap this up.
No.
Yeah,
No,
and
no,
I'm
no,
just saying this
this year's
is.
budget, you use reserve, you use from the reserve fund.
You're spending
No, we
$25
didn't.
million
We didn't
this
use
Yeah,
year.
we understand that. No, we understand that very clearly. And that's going to be very much a part of our deliberations as we move forward. Because we want to end up with a budget that's conservative rather than allows us to spend what we think we're going to have, but also a budget that we know we can live with, and
I
that's.
think, if I may, if we have a consensus on the revenue number as a county, then you will not have a problem with the assembly with the budget. Last year, 37% of the delegates voted against the budget because we did not agree with the revenue number.
Right.
If you walk in the door with consensus on the revenue number, there should be no reason why all of us aren't supporting the budget.
That's
a
why I'm
great
delighted that you're here, because this is the beginning of that
very helpful.
discussion. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we're going
So we're
to
in
take in
recess?
recess until
Move to
12:30. Thank you very much.